All right, hello everybody. This is Onino Ken, and today we are going to be taking a look about importing a map from a Dungeon Draft DD2VTT file. And today we're going to be working with a file from Morvold Press, which is called the Thieves' Brothel. So this is a large map. It's 45 by 45, and we're gonna bring in the base image, take a look at the walls and see how that works. And then after that, we're going to start by working with some tiles to create a automatic uh, roof reveal layer. And then after that, we will go in and start setting up some teleport pads with multi-level tokens to allow our players to move more or less seamlessly between scenes. So let's go ahead and take a look. I've created a fresh world for the purposes of this demonstration. So first I'm going to go through the modules that we need to do all this in Foundry. And the first one I'm going to turn on is Tidy UI. And that's going to make life a lot easier for us. Now, going from the top, there's a lot, obviously, there's a lot of modules here. I'm not going to turn all of them on because we won't need them. But as we go through here, I'll let you know which ones we are going to use. So we're going to use Community Lighting by Blitz, DF Curvy Walls. It's got a couple of dependencies. We'll go ahead and turn those on just in case we need to update the walls that come in from Dungeon Draft. We'll turn on drag upload because it is useful for adding scene dressings, which could come into play later. We're going to turn on FX Master, which allows us to do things like animate the smoke and add weather and do some other stuff. We'll add grid scale menu just in case we need to tweak the grid, but I think this this pack came with gridless backgrounds, which is always useful. I'm going to turn on all of our library modules. They're generally pretty useful. Definitely turning on multi-level tokens. Perfect vision, also useful for messing around with scene lighting. Roofs and overhead tiles, very useful for and crucial to one of the things that we're going to be doing today, which is putting roofs over our building interiors. Shared data is actually a home-written module that I did to allow me to share compendiums between game worlds. We're going to use token attacher just in case. If we need to stack multiple tokens, we can use token attacher to make them all one item. Universal Battle Map Importer is the one that we're going to use to actually bring the DD2VTT file into our game. And then we're also going to turn on wall height for right now because I don't know if we're going to use it for this one or not, but might as well turn it on just in case. Right, now once that is done, we've got some more work to do on the back end. Now here we have the image pack from the Morvold press distribution, which is the Thieves Brothel. I'm going to go ahead and switch this to details so I can get a better idea of what I'm dealing with. So we've got no grid, which is what we want, and here's our DD2VTT file. And we've got 2 floors, so we're going to go ahead and process this file first. But before we do that, what I want to do is I want to go in and grab all of my tiles, most of my roofs here, and I'm going to move these into my Foundry data structure. You've got a network store here. And I have a folder specifically for tiles, makes them easier to find. I'm going to create a new folder, Thieves Brothel, and I'm going to paste those tiles into here. All right, so now we've got those available for us on the server. Go ahead and get this out of the way. Now coming back to our world again, this is a blank world. As you can see, we've got only the things that come with the modules that we've turned on so far. All right, now to bring in a dungeon draft virtual tabletop file, we're going to go to the scene tab, and down at the bottom there's the universal battle map import. So we'll click on that, and we're going to give this a scene name. Now, when we import this, it's going to create either a ping or a WebP file. In this case, we're going to import it as a WebP because that actually we're going to leave it as ping and convert it to a WebP. We want it to be a WebP because that is a smaller file type, and that helps us with performance. For fidelity, generally speaking, we're going to leave this all the way to the left. This is determined by the shapes of your map. So if you're importing a cave, depending on how complex your walls are, you're going to want to set these further to the right. If you've got a bunch of curves, things like that, the farther right, the more wall segments you'll get. Keep in mind, the more wall segments you have, the more performance issues you can have, and you can end up with players getting hung up on walls and other things like that. So we'll go ahead and choose our file, find our Thieves Brothel. Thieves Brothel, no grid. We don't want night, and we don't want the second floor. So we're going to go with this one right here. Now, offset describes how far back from the graphical edge of the wall the VTT wall is going to be placed. You can play around with this number depending on how much decoration you have in your walls. And what this does is it allows the characters to see the texture of the wall. So if you have a stone wall versus a wood wall, if you put this at 0 and the VTT wall is right on top of it, they're not going to be able to see any of the artwork for that wall. So we're going to set this at 0.1 because that'll give us a little bit of an offset. If you have really detailed walls that are pretty thick, but otherwise not usable, you can push this number upwards. If you're having problems bringing the file in other words, the converter isn't sure where to put the walls, you can always set this back down to 0 or 0.1. So we'll go ahead and import this. All right, so that brings our map into the scene. As you can see, it's quite a large map. Now you need to take a look at your file to determine if your grid is the correct size. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the settings here. Grid size 150. And we'll bump up the grid opacity just a little bit so that we can see it. All right, now that that's done, we are going to start taking a look at the walls that came in with it. And we'll go ahead and start in the upper left corner here. Now, when you bring in a Dungeon Drafted virtual tabletop file, you need to take the time to go through and check your walls before you play, because while it can do a good job identifying windows and doors and things like that, you don't want to have a situation where it misses them. So as we're looking at this, we can see a number of doors already in the file, but I can already see a number of places where doors have been missed. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on the wall tool. And see. So this is a door right here. So I need to change that to perception normal and is a door. We'll update that. Now that appears to be a shuttered window. This appears to be a door. The one thing we can do, you can hold down your shift key once you've identified a group of things that should be doors but aren't currently doors. This looks like another door over here. Then go ahead and pick all of those. And then we're going to go ahead and set this perception normal is door. And we'll update those. And now we have doors where the importer guessed a window. As you're going through this, one thing you'll notice is that there's some lighting effects already in place in here. Looks like they're just using kind of a pulsing lighting. One thing that we can do is we can go in and check these lighting settings. Now, this is a lot of lights. Depending on how it performs and what your desires are, you can go in and clean some of this up if you want to. I'm going to go ahead and set this to torch instead of none. And it's a really subtle effect. You'll really have to play with that quite a bit to get the lighting effects the way that you want them. But as I was saying, it's worth your time to go through and check all of your walls. Now, I was talking about the offset. Here's a good example of where the offset really comes into play. Here we have a double thick wall with a rock wall on the outside and a wooden texture on the inside. The point 1 sets the wall back from the graphical edge of the wall so that the players on the outside will be able to see this rock wall, and the players on the inside here will be able to see the wood wall. That's very important to do. Otherwise, you're losing a lot of the artistic value of your map. So yeah, you're going to want to go through and check everywhere, make sure that your doors are doors and your windows are windows. And while it will take you a little bit of time, it is definitely worth it, and it is a whole lot faster than having to go through and um, do all the walls by hand. So while it is a little bit of a hassle, it's definitely a lot easier than doing all of this from scratch. All right, now if I were, obviously if I were setting this up for a session, I would go through and um, get all of that set up. Every once in a while, you have to be careful because you'll find weird things. For example, this wall here makes no sense whatsoever. So we're gonna pick that one out and delete that wall. Same with this one. All right, now assuming I'd gone through and double checked all of my doors and everything I needed to be a door was a door and everything I needed to be a window was a window. Next thing I need to do is come back and put roofs on these buildings. And I'm going to do that using the tile browser. Now, the tile browser is essentially a file browser that you can use to find images within your folder's data, your server's data structure. As you remember, I copied the roof tiles from the map pack into the tiles directory of my server. Here they are under these brothel. Now, what I need to do is I need to start matching up roofs to buildings. So this one looks like a pretty good match here. So I'm going to scroll out a little bit. I'm going to click on this and drag this onto the map. Now that looks a little big, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to resize this to shape over my building here. This one's actually a little harder than normal because the easiest way to do this is to line it up with the upper left corner of the building you're trying to cover and then set it to, and then just pull down with this item. Now, if you get a situation where you're trying to drag your tile into place and it keeps snapping away from where you want it to be, it's snapping to the underlying placement grid. What you can do as you are placing the tiles, hold down the shift key before you release your mouse button, and that is going to let you place it wherever. It'll ignore the underlaying invisible grid. Now, next thing I'm going to do with my tile selection tool active, I'm going to click on it to select it. I'm going to right click on it to bring up the tile options here. Now you can lock it, you can bring it to front or send it to the back. If you have multiple tiles layered one over the top of the other, that's where these become beneficial. What we're going to do for this one is we're going to send it to the roof layer. So that declares this to be a roof. And it gives us a couple of opacity sliders here that we can use to determine what things look like. So basically, this is the opacity of the roof if a token has vision inside the room, which you can see as I mouse over it here. So if I drop this down to nothing, it becomes even more and more visible. So at 0, the roof basically disappears. So I'm going to leave that just a little bit more than 0, just so we kind of get a little bit of an idea of a roof there. This is really a matter of taste. It's up to you. Now let's see. I got a round building over here. Looks like we're going to be using this one for that. So we'll drag that out onto our map, and that thing is absolutely huge. So we are now, if you hold down the Alt key while you drag and resize this thing, it will constrain it to its normal proportions. So here I've gone a little bit too far. So I'll go ahead and resize that upwards. Use my shift placement method to get it positioned where I want it. Right click and send that to the roof. Now let's see here. We've got a fair few tiles here. Let's see if I have one. I'm terrible at puzzles, so apologies if this is going to take me a little bit. I'd like to find this one, or even a square one. Here, this one fits here, and this is going to be perfect because it is. We've got the upper left corner here that we can work with. Oh, use our shift drag to place it. Make sure we get the fireplace over the fireplace. We're going to send it to the roof. A little bit smaller, just a little. There we have a roof over that building. And that kind of gives you an idea of how we put roofs over our buildings. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to grab a character so that I can bring them in. You can see what these overhead roofs do when you have a character on the map. So to do this, what I am going to do is I am going to use the drag and drop uploader. And I'm just going to go to tokens and we'll go with characters. And we'll just grab a blue fighter with a sword here. Just going to drag them onto the map. I'll set them up as a character. And we are good to go. Now selecting them, I need to open this door here. With the door open, they're able to walk inside, and as you can see, the roof immediately vanishes from view. Since we have the opacity set so they can still see the roof, we can just see a little bit of that ghost image above. Stepping back out, the roof returns into place and our character can go along their way. See the same thing with this building right over here. In the house, out of the house. And that's how the roofs and overhead tiles functionality works. Now in the next part, what I will do is I'll go ahead and take the time to figure out the rest of the roofs and get those in place. And then what I will do is I will get a second scene with the second floor of this map set up so that I can start connecting the buildings that have first floors and second floors so that players can move around the map without me having to click and drag people from one spot to the other. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments and I will try to be diligent about checking for those. And in any case, thank you for your time.